Okay, hello. Welcome to the Game Librarian Podcast, episode 119. Crazy to think that we're here. I mean, to see us in 2026, another lovely Monday. We have a big showcase coming up. A direct, a Xbox held event. I mean, that coming up soon is pretty big. I think with the looming Steam machine, right? I think with the already kind of out there Xbox handheld and then the Steam Deck that's already been, doing pretty well. With the advent of cloud gaming, I think Xbox is in for something, in for change. They're in for a massive dynamic shift, and they've been waiting for this. For their consoles, I think that's done. I think that it would be a shock if we saw a Xbox system in the future, like a new system, competition of a PS6 or a Switch 3 or whatever, in terms of console hardware. I think it's up to whether Xbox even continues that line of, products. But their games, I think everyone is tired of seeing how they've managed their gaming library. And Game Pass is really good. Game Pass is a good offer. I think at the time, when it wasn't maybe like $30 a month or whatever it is now, they had a massive price increase. And I'll be honest, I don't even think the catalog as of now, it's been going on for what would be nearly like 6, 7 years. Game Pass has been around. No World of Warcraft, they have that living combat evolved game. And to me, that's just a massive spit in the face of the game just coming out. And yeah, PS5 is all cool and decent, I suppose, but I don't think it's what fans have been waiting for. We want, and so there have been no other communication or gameplay of any other games coming out. They've had, announcements for things like Gears of War Day, Fable, and maybe I'm missing a few other ones. But wow. Wow. And it's insane to think, with the acquisitions, there's not even like small teases around at some corner. I mean, we have Fallout, right? There's that big Fallout countdown. A remaster is all cool and all, I don't having the Oblivion remaster was an awesome surprise last year. Incredible. But just another cool Fallout remaster that's, whether it's not Fallout 3 or not Fallout Vegas or it's, the other one, I think that's something. Maybe it's going to be both just at the same time. That'd be kind of cool. But I think that new games need to be for show. They need to be let out and discussed, and we just have gotten nothing. Elder Scrolls 6 announced when? 6 years ago? I don't know. To me, it's incredible to think that they been doing all that work and then nothing on Elder 6. So this showcase really needs to be something. And they only really mentioned Fable 4 and Forza, which isn't, you know, all that spectacular. Fable coming back is pretty cool. They'll probably even announce that this game is going to be on PS5 as well. That's probably what they're going to do. Because I think even Fable 3 was at PS3 at some point. So that's not even all necessarily like unfathomable. What would Fable 4 need to have to be a pretty hype game? Ooh, I think it should have more co-op. It's probably going to have 4 players. That's going to be really cool. I would like to see that. Maybe not. I don't really know if they're going to do that. I think it'll probably be, similar to Hogwarts Legacy. No Michael Jacksons. And then they should have like home building or at least some kind of like building mechanic. I don't really necessarily know what they're going to be doing for the classes. And then they're probably going to make references to older games, which is insane. So, will it come out this year? I couldn't tell you. I mean, that's entirely up in the air whether it is going to come out this year, simply because these games take a long time to come out. And considering, the timing of it, it probably would be slated to come out of the year. This announcement, it seems very focused. They talked about it because we haven't heard anything about it since they did a little teaser, I think 2 years ago at the Game Awards. Yeah, that was pretty much it. The only time I remember they do anything with that. And I don't necessarily know anything about Forza, but unless it's like very similar to the Crew, I wouldn't even play it alone. For now, like 3, anything similar to that would be incredible. Now, specifically for Gears of War E-Day, what is on the horizon for that? I think, of course, they're going to be following the Battle Pass model, especially similar to what they had in the last games, just initially. Now, what would I want to see out of that? You know what? Just gun and character cosmetic stuff at the very least. Oh, like, you know, XP upgrades or nonsense or whatever. Just cosmetics. And then I think characters just be free. And then obviously going to have like DLC and then expansions, maps should be paid for, just there, and then everybody can use them. Yeah, I think it's very basic. I don't think that's something that's going to be done badly, because I think that they have a lot of content and they're going to have to represent that in some way, especially diversity for Gears of War E-Day. I mean, it's going to be getting it would be very tiring just to be doing Locust and the same gears over and over again. I think that they're going to have these other expanding characters, Chase, Dizzy, characters that we really haven't even seen. They might make new characters, right? It seems like they're even going to do that for Halo Combat Evolved, just add in and make stuff. I mean, it's their franchise. They're always going to make entirely new characters, which is something to look forward to. E-Day is something that's very awesome lore-wise, which is pretty much an already awesome thing to see. But will it be the same? Who could say? Especially in terms of like that gameplay, it's not very modernized gameplay. The duck and cover, even making it very similar to the old style games, Gears 2, Gears 3. Who's to say if that's going to be something that's even made to be the same? I think it's more than likely guaranteed, but toss up, always a toss up. Fallout 5. I will say that if you can't play as any other race in a next Fallout game, I don't want to play it. You can do it in 76. You can choose to become a ghoul later on. Just do the same thing. Elder Scrolls, do like a different, intro or whatever that for each race or whatever. Because I think that needs to be there in the next Fallout game, unless it's going to be really bad. And then Elder Scrolls 6, if there's no gameplay, it's going to be a bad showcase. it's gonna be something, because we haven't seen that game in forever. And I think games like Cyberpunk 76 or 77 is definitely like the pinnacle of that open world type feeling game. And Bethesda needs to, outshine that one to really even hold a foothold to, Game of the Year or open world games where because their track record, no. And then we have Summer Game Fest, which is, I think, a bad sign in my opinion, just a bad sign. We're waiting for these massive announcements on these larger events. I mean, Xbox always has their big stuff, but it's probably gonna be like Halo Combat Evolved, maybe Gears of Day, and maybe Elder Scrolls 6 at Summer's Game Fest, just because that is the only next time that I could see them even doing an announcement. They didn't do anything last year big around the fall, winter time. No, it's insane. So to see that this might be Xbox's very last game focused showcase, because I really don't know what they're going to be doing with their game library. Really just hasn't been a lot of emphasis on these games from them. It's incredible. So besides games that are announced or up and coming, we have something special coming up. Another guest, some from the developer and publisher ground on their game, the time we have left, which I know we've seen, I believe, a Summer Game Fest or Game Awards in the last 2 years, and they even had, unfortunately, like a cancellation on development, but they're back and up and running. The demo is really cool. Haven't finished it, but we did get a chance to try out its tutorial, see what its mechanics are, and early on, it's awesome. I mean, incredible. So very excited to talk about that in the future, because these RPG games, especially with Persona 6 coming out, you know, in the future, obviously, but we're gonna have the 30th anniversary this year. I don't really know what the date is, but Persona has been a very fun RPG franchise to go through in the last few years. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen with the future development of these type of large scale RPGs. The time I have left is very similar to that. Not the same anime art style, but it has its own little twist to it. Battlefield 6, its season 1 is almost over. And I think that it's much just relatively lackluster. That's really basically where they have gotten its massive attraction for. It's just mostly some buildings, and then they feel like they're like construction sites, like industrial places. I would like to see a big mall, like a big football stadium, something cool like that. But who's to say what's going to come up soon? And then we got to play Cast and Chill, which is a tiny little indie fishing game, and it's a scrolling fishing game. Basically, you go out to sea, you fish, you come back, sell them, buy your upgrades. We haven't gotten a whole lot of time into it, but we'll take some time more, and then we'll see what more has to offer. Hopefully, it has more than just like a little fish. Maybe it has like exotic creatures. Haven't really seen it. Now, sides games, which is definitely going to be on and off coming up in the podcast for game announcements, things like that. There have been a few things I've been reading. We have to catch on Absolute T Comics. That just hasn't happened yet. And then some that we've been hearing a lot about, and that is Frieren. Frieren is a fantasy type manga, and it's very chill. It's very lax. I really enjoy it because it's straightforward. Its narrative doesn't really branch out into like just nonsense or what these lighthearted stuff is. It has very good consistency with that, and it's very lighthearted, which is nice. It's change of pace considering some of the stuff we've been reading the last few weeks or so. So we're only on chapter like 102 or so. We just got chapter 100. That's all I remember. And then, not to really get to spoilers, just because season 2 and all that's coming out, but I'm enjoying the manga. So I'm sure the anime is already just fantastic. It is pretty cool. Frieren is a story, like a fantasy, Middle Earth esque type fantasy, but the journey's already over, which is cool. And then the rest of the manga really much taking favors. So you take like rewards and then for your quest, right? And then there's a few more like smaller details that are being more fleshed out. So like we don't really know what's going on with the world. There's a lot. You don't really get the full picture, but it definitely be cool. And then for manga, right, there's this Boruto and Dan. These been the only really two chapters that we've read. There's no One Piece. There's no Dragon Ball, which is supposed to be coming out soon. Insane. And then, we've been catching up on Aimless and the Pit. Pit C2 comes out. I'm very excited for that. So, those shows have been pretty cool. But something that was very exciting was the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. I believe it's called Search for SquarePants. And then there was a lot of butt jokes, and then there were some decently, paced moments and mostly funny, but the voices weren't necessarily the same. Ultimately, that's just how that goes for, voice acting and all that stuff. But the animation is actually pretty on par, pretty good. I really enjoyed that. So initially, we're just here to talk about games and what we've been reading. Pretty pretty slow time this time of year, but we'll be catching up on some stuff. But with the game news, it's gonna be incredible what I think we're gonna have coming up. Because up until Summer Game Fest, we're only gonna be knowing about games that like we already know about, right? That's really what's I think in for our future. But until then, peace.